Good morning.
Good morning.
As most of you know, I always make an outline so that I don't go off for 3 hours. And I also usually go home and look at the outline and find I didn't say it. But today, I'm going to try to stick with the outline, and I feel if I don't, I'm going to be given a little shove by a spirit person. So I'm going to behave myself the best I can. My topic today is a tribute, a message of love, a message of understanding. And this is very close and dear to my heart for many reasons, some which I will tell and some which I will keep to myself until I'm told to tell it. I was chosen to give this wonderful story because it not only tells you about what a real spiritualist is, but it also will give you some incentive to put away the old and to put on the new. So I've already spoke for 2 minutes and haven't said a word. That's on my outline. But I'll try. It really is my honor, and I feel humble to be able to stand here today and to speak to you about this person. She never was too busy. She never had an excuse. She always picked up the banner and did what needed to be done. She's one who has enhanced my life in many ways. And I know if you know more about her and about her will and wishes, there's no way it will not enhance your life also. MEC, as I will call her for the moment, is known by various titles, and you may have heard them before. She's called ME, she is called Mercy, she is called Dearest, and she's called the Grand Dame of Spiritualism. Best of all, she is called the Animated Encyclopedia of Spiritualism. She has a rich history, and like I said, it could take a week or more to go through what Mercy has done. She has been a book of knowledge, open book for anyone who wants to understand a better way of life. But she always insisted that you be humble and you do everything willingly. She has worked with the mediums in trying to raise their consciousness. She has worked with the laws of nature to try to express the life of a true spiritualist. She didn't just talk it, she walked the walk. M.E. was born on September 3rd, and you can choose 1864, 1866, or 1868. I have done everything I can to find out her birthday. And there's no way you'll find it, because in my search, I have turned over every rock there is. So I'm sure that you can just accept whichever one you choose. However, I have one little guideline, and that is the census. The census said that she was born in 1868, being 2 years old. So, if she was 2 years old in 1868, with my mathematics, she must have been born in 1866. But you still have a choice. Today, I specifically wanted to talk about ME because last Sunday was already booked, and this is the closer to it. But her 152nd birthday was on September the 3rd. Her name, it was assigned to her by her mother because of the grandparents. One was Mary and one was Elizabeth. So guess what? They never knew who they were calling, if they called her Mary or Elizabeth. so they just called her N.E. all through her growing up days. And that carried through for most of us. But her descendants, and I know her great-granddaughter, which I met, thankfully, on Facebook. And she told me a lot of intimate things about the family life. And she said that they decided that they were no longer going to call her Annie, but they were going to call her Dearest Mercy. And the reason she was given the name Mercy in the first place was because that's exactly what she had for everyone. She always cared, no matter what your situation was, whether you were at a high or at a low. She was always there to egg you on to even be better. Her mother was Annie Hill. She was the daughter of the well-known inventor, Benjamin J. Hill. And he had quite a large organization. And in fact, he did make the first stamp machine that's used on the little gold seals that go on all of the documentation, like a charter, etc. And it was set about this high, and the handle came all the way up here, and you had to pull that handle all the way down to get the imprint. But that was the first thing he did for the National, was give them the stamp. George Colby had been nominated as the trustee on the first board of the NSAC in 1893. And he stood up at the platform and he thanked everyone profusely. And 3 months later, he sent a letter and said, I don't know who put me on the board. I don't want to be on the board. I never did want to be on the board. And so he was removed from the board. And who do you think they would place him with? Benjamin Hill. There's a lot could be said about her growing up days. But I'm not sure who chose this, because some things disappeared off my computer. And then other things seemed to show up. And then I would have to go look it up because I wasn't sure of it. So from here on we go and take the ride with Mercy. At about the age of 10, her mother married a man by the name of Thomas Batley, and thus she became Mary E. Hill Batley. After her grown-up days, still as a young lady, in 1880, she married Harry Cadwalder. Now, let me tell you something. That wasn't an easy selection, because when she got the message from Spirit to find Harry C., she began her hunt, and she lived in Philadelphia. And there was 5 Harry C. in Philadelphia. So she went through each one cautiously, meeting them, looking them over, and asking Spirit if it was the right one. Wouldn't you guess it? It was the last Harry C. that was the right one. So she had a time in finding her husband. But they got married, and they had one son, and he was Harry Jr. He played a very important part in the Panama Canal. And just a short time after she got really involved in moving forward with the spiritualist movement, she was ordained by Reverend Adeline Gladding in Philadelphia under the Corporation of the Spiritualists of Philadelphia on the 21st day of October, and it was signed by the President and the Secretary. Her name, the person, the spirit that touches many today as well as in the past, is synonymous with spiritualism. If you say one, you hear the other. She attended every single convention that was held in the name of spiritualism, not only the national organization, but the churches. And remember, back in those days, there wasn't air travel. There wasn't vehicles like an automobile. And Mercy went from one end of the United States to the other, north and south, east and west. wherever she was called. She crossed the ocean some 20 times, going to conventions around the world. But she missed one, and she regretted that all of her life. But the reason she missed it was she was very sick. And we wonder about her getting very sick, because what took place at that convention would have upset her terribly. And so somehow she was kept from going with her illness. The spiritualists, as you know, came together in 1893 to form a national organization and to be an umbrella for all spiritualists. It was called the National Spiritualist Association. Mercy was nominated to the board, as one would be expecting. But then, knowing Mercy, you will understand why she declined the nomination. She stood up and she said, and I quote, "I decline this nomination, for it would not only be fair for the West Coast of the United States to have representation. The board members that had been selected so far were all on the East Coast. So rather than have a special place on a board, she stepped back so someone from the West Coast could be accepted and be able to spread the word of spiritualism out west." She was a unique person. She could compare today with no one. She is step ladder high above all of us. She always was and always will be. She traveled near and far whenever needed. It didn't matter what she had to do to get there, she was there. And not only that, Mercy didn't just think of herself and the group that she was serving. She always thought of the beloved organization that formed to bring everyone together. And so she always took a special offering at every service she attended and turned it over to the organization. Mercy always thought of everyone before herself. Her friends, if you ever hear them speak, talk about her beautiful blue eyes and talk about how immaculately she was always dressed. And she always had pearls draped around her neck. And I'll just inject something here. Do you remember Washington, D.C.?
Oh, I do. Yes.
We were in the Smithsonian Institute, and these pearls were there. They're the Jacqueline Kennedy pearls. They were $200. And I said to Jean, "I need pearls like a hole in the head." And I'm not going to spend $200 on some pearls. And we never did get out of there very soon.
No. Well,
Because I had this dragging feeling back to this set of pearls. Little did I realize why or who was behind the set of pearls until I really investigated Mercy. You would never see her unless her two-stranded pearls hung all the way down to here. Every picture of her has the pearls. And just so you can see, I brought this one of her and her precious pearls. So after I realized why I ended up buying the pearls, I'm very happy I spent the $200. She was also a striking personality, and her intellect was beyond compare. She would be a difficult person for you to debate with on any subject, not only just spiritualism. But if you really wanted the facts of the history, it was Mercy who got them straight. And so I have moved very close to her. In the late 1800s, around 1897 I believe it was, she and Harrison D. Barrett formed a defense league which served the mediums who had been arrested. You know, in those days, every body was against spiritualism and these crazy people that got up and talked to the dead. And so they were often hauled into jail and stood before the judge. and there was Mercy and Harrison D. Barrett standing beside them. If they were honest, they would defend them. They were true and sincere mediums that had been arrested many times, and both of these people spoke on their behalf. And as one of the occasions, and I copied it specifically, she wrote a long letter to Dr. Mary T. Longley, who was the secretary of the NSA. And this is what she said, I quote, "Think of it, our mediums all acquitted today. The responsibility for me is nearly past. I shall soon cease to suffer from the misunderstanding and the misjudgment of those who have sought to prejudice the public in regard to my work, in regard to mediums, and in regard to spiritualism. My heart is so full, 7 of them, all freed. Can you understand the heartaches I have gone through this defense? Can you understand what this Thanksgiving means to me? Yours fraternally, MEC," unquote. Can you imagine? They went before the judge day after day after day. She had a lot of heartache in her life. Another thing that Mercy is remembered for so well, she was appointed in 1909 as the National Superintendent of Lyceums, and her name is also synonymous with the Lyceums of Spiritualism. She adored children, and she had many all across the United States call her mom or grandmom. One of the funnest things she did, and was so diligent, she often went to Lilydale, and she could just see the vision of a children's lyceum building and of a children's recreational center. And so, of course, it didn't last very long as a thing up here, but even today you can go there and you can see the beautiful lyceum that was built under her direction. And you can also see the wonderful play yard, which just last year they redid and put in all new swings and seesaws and so forth. It's called the Children's Acre. And Mercy always loved it. She had a week each season called the Children's Week. And I have a scrapbook of pictures of Mercy and a lot of her work. And some of the times there was over 100 children there. And everyone just loved Children's Week. It always ended with a Dorothy doll party. And what's that all about? Mercy brought back dolls from all over the world, and her favorite one was Dorothy. She would bring all her dolls and allow the children to select the doll for the day. And today, we still are fortunate because periodically, the owner of the doll carriage and the doll brings Dorothy to the Assembly Hall in Casadega, New York. Mercy did so much. She did just so much. And then she really got wound up. Sometimes I wonder if she's not pushing me in some of the things I get wound up in, because she realized that there was friction within the organization, and most of it based on jealousy. And the men in the board tried to keep her to the background. So J.R. Francis, who was the editor and owner of the Progressive Thinker, made his transition. His wife tried to keep the paper going but couldn't. And so Mercy bought the paper and she became the voice of spiritualism. Well, you know, that made them happy. But she had a venue to spread the truth, and the truth she did. So even in their displeasure, they had to accept her because she was promoting them. They never did understand Mercy. They never did understand. She believed the principles. She believed the philosophy, and she lived it. She didn't hold a grudge. So that led her into becoming an author. because not only did she write columns for the paper, but she began to write pamphlets. And two of the main pamphlets she wrote, one is the Diamond Jubilee, and the other one is about the first Spiritualist Association in Philadelphia. By the way, at that time, Pennsylvania had 308 spiritualist churches. Can you believe that one? And so they had a big organization. Anyway, she authored several books, and one of the books that tells a lot about what was going on in those days is about Mary Vanderbilt, the 20th century seer. And she is in the line, I found out just recently, for you who watch CNN, Anderson Cooper. It goes back on his mother's side of the family. Her classic piece of work is High School in History. It's a small book. It's factual. It is the only factual book that was written on spiritualism. Everything else is stories that have been passed on by word of mouth. But she's got the facts. So if you want to know about really what happened, you go back to 1848 and let Mercy tell you the story. She also reprinted the book written by Nettie Maynard Colburn, who was Abraham Lincoln, a spiritualist. She was a friend of W.T. Stead, and she was at the convention, and she had just received a letter from him. Unbeknown to all of them, he had made his transition on the Titanic. But he had mailed it just before he went aboard the ship. And so she held it up, and the next day at the convention, she read the contents. At age 48, Mercy was left a widow, and it left her lots of time on her hands. So she continued her work and put all of her life into spiritualism. During World War II, she saw that, some say 8, some say 21, something else I haven't proven yet, ambulances to France in the name of American spiritualists. She was quite the lady. She did all she could for the Fox sisters, the stone that stands at the house, telling about the sisters, and ending with there is no death and there are no dead, which was something she always said. And then she was to Conan Doyle Place, a obelisk in Rochester, New York, to recognize spiritualists of the world. The stone was the obelisk was moved when the church was sold in front of her house, which was on Troop Street in Rochester. And then they built I-490, and on the loop, today, there stands that big monument to spiritualism. She never left a stone unturned. And I'm going to have to just skip right through this because time is fleeting. Her husband was interred in the Northwood Cemetery, and that is where she is today, her body is today. We know that her memory will linger on long, and the work she did will always be commended. And in closing, I'd like to leave you with this. Her home was on Loomis Street in Chicago. It was magnificently furnished. It was a marvelous collection of manuscripts written by spiritualists from all over the world. Her appearance, she was a tall lady. She was always strikingly adorned in her beautiful clothes. Her expressive blue eyes and her unusual sweet face was something everyone loved to see. She loved jewelry and proudly displayed her beautiful long string of pearls draped around her neck, all the way down to her base. My friends, do yourself a favor. Look into the depths of Mercy's life. It will enhance your life. It will guide you. The way she lived and the way she taught guides every spiritualist or every being that picks up her books with the philosophy of spiritualism. It will enlighten your way to live. Someday, when time permits, I'll share my fortunate connection with ME. So, to you, dearest Mercy, happy birthday.